Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of LíR Confidential on lirmedia.tv. And if you want to email us about any of the programs, it's info@lirmedia.tv. I'm absolutely delighted to have as my guest this morning in the studio, suitably socially distancing, I may add, just in case we get a knock at the door, Mr. Dermott Petty. Good morning, Dermott.
Good morning, Pat.
Now, Dermott is up there in Doolin, beautiful part of County Clare for all of you who haven't visited it yet, the few that are left. Now, Dermott has been involved in drama, writing, short film making, generally speaking, good all-round, fantastic contributor to the arts. And Ballycartoon Productions, Dermott, how did that come about?
Well, it came about, I was in college in Tralee. I went back as a mature student and we were doing an animation project. And we were trying to come up with a name for a company. And I liked Ballycartoon. Now, we went with something else, but I just liked it because the townland of cartoons. And I love cartoons. And a cartoon is always a story. And the premise of Ballycartoon is storytelling for the 21st century. You know, and it all goes back to the Shanachie all the way up to, you know, Flash media. And at this stage, we've made short films, we've made short animations, and we've produced 2 plays, and we're working on a new one as well. And the latest project was the only punk rocker in the village, which played in Barnstable in North Devon last summer, played in Listonvarna and Doolin. We were supposed to be at the Brighton Fringe in early start of May, which would have been fantastic. It's the second biggest fringe in Britain outside of the Edinburgh one. But unfortunately, due to the virus,
I know.
But again, going back to Ballycartoon, it's storytelling for the 21st century. You know, so
Excellent. It reminded me of Ballymegash Urban District Council. All those years ago, anything with a Bally.
Yeah.
Are you too young to remember that?
No, I love Paul's Pictorial Weekly. It's one of my favourites. Is Ballymegash and the Cork Mothers of 7, which was one of my favourites.
I didn't know why RT never revived that and showed as a repeat.
They lost the tapes, but anyhow, it's neither here nor there. But yeah, it was Sham Maya, and it had
that's right.
Ellie, and it had Eamon Morrissey and the Minister for Hardship. No, that was fantastic set.
Oh, that was just I just loved it. You know. Frank Kelly, when you think of it, all those years ago, and all the way up then to Father Ted with Frank Kelly.
He's an extraordinary
man. Yeah, an extraordinary man. Now, you mentioned there, Dermott, that the Brighton Fringe, obviously, I did a bit of research on it. It is a very big one, but Fringe festivals, this is the season for all those festivals. Yeah. This is the time when your activity and your excitement as a creator, artistic creator, this is where you would bring your wares, so to speak. And all of that now it's the lifeblood of people like yourself, you know, and people, I suppose, who are not involved directly in the arts wouldn't give it a second. Well, you know, there are other things, but I think myself that it's a shame myself that these things are not highlighted more in mainstream media.
I agree. I mean, it's also just, there was an excellent speech by Catherine Connolly, the TD in the Dáil, and she spoke about the investment and the consideration given by the Irish government compared to the Scottish government, which is about the same population. And its importance is right now in this pandemic that it's cultural content is keeping people going. You know, this didn't happen overnight. This didn't happen in a vacuum. This was over time. And it's also just that interaction with an audience. It's a wonderful connection. It's terrifying. And that is also the tragedy there. Now, it's also, I mean, I'm not going to compare myself to, say, some poor family that have that mortgage to pay and have 3 mouths to feed. Nonetheless, the importance of culture can't be understated. And a society where culture is deaf and blind, more or less. It gives people an outlet. And I think that's really important. To me, it's as important as the soccer results or the rugby or the GAA. And I'm a big sports fan, but I would put this up just as equal with that in the vacuum created.
You're dead right, because we've been discussing this in another program I'm involved in, and that I think, and a lot of people are coming around to this now because we have plenty of time in our hands to think and I suppose make a realignment of what's important in life. And one of them is that I believe myself that the arts in general should be an automatic thing that you teach your children going to national school, just like reading and writing. It should be a normal part of the curriculum, you know, in my opinion.
Without question, and in a lot of cultures they have this, and I think we're very rigid. We're still very post-colonial. We sort of knee our way into things, but it is very important because children have wonderful imagination. So do adults, you know, and it's a conversation that goes on for all of your life culture. It's not just something you learn a poem for your intercert and that's the end of it. There's much more involved. But you know, I think. But hopefully from all of this that there'll be a realization that these things are much more important than they were given credit for. Because you have a tourist board and whatever that we want to claim Beckett and Joyce and the music of Ireland, the dance of Ireland, but are very reluctant to support it on the ground level. There's some support, so it's not without it, but I mean, I think it could be so much more. You know.
Absolutely, and I'm not an expert by any manner of means, but for regarding funding, but I mean we have funding from the Arts Council of Ireland, okay, and then of course when you break it down to the other 32 or 26 counties, you have each and every one of those counties. I believe you have an arts and cultural officer attached to the county council, and they have a budget as well for arts, so to speak, have they?
They do, but it's not huge. Now, in fairness, I have, like the last couple of plays, the Clare County Council and the Arts Office was very, very good. It's not a huge amount of money, but it does really help, and they're actually very good to deal with. The Arts Council is the disaster. You know, we had a little problem there with me. I'm dyslexic, so forms and numbers and stuff can destroy my day. And they have these application forms, and I'll just give you one anecdote in this. I'll just leave it there because it's the truth. They have, to fill out their application, you have to download a software called open source software.
Open source, yeah.
Yeah, and for some reason, if you can't do it on your computer, etc., if you send in the form, they won't accept it. And the day I put it in was the day that they actually were closing everything down. And I sent them an email that says, I can't do it. I have too many things in my life going on right now. Not that I would have got it, to be perfectly honest. But the fact that something tantric about the software is more important than the actual project you're proposing. And two is that it's an application form. It's just going to sit there. It's like filling out a form. You know, there's no interview process. There's no person to person. There's no, this is what we might do. And again, I'm well aware that they can't do everything, but there's a case where bureaucracy becomes more important than the culture. And that's my opinion, but I would stand by that. You know?
And what you said.
Dancing brings trouble to those who don't comply with the authorities.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a dance master.
Show me some dance. No license, no dancing.
About being dyslexics, indeed, even filling up forms. Normally, when we were going for a grant last year, we had a 32-page form to fill up. We were only looking for a few bob, and I, being retired from civil service, I was well used to forms. You know what I mean? But we still had to get help to do it, which is shocking in a way. Well, it's not shocking, but it's unfair. It's unfair.
Yeah, it is unfair. It is unfair. It's and just, you know, there's almost like people that just spend their time filling out forms, and you're like, that's pretty a terrible use of. I mean, there has to be some context. There has to be things there, but it can't just be a written form. There should be an interview process. There should be. We live in this area of media and stuff. We should be able to send a video in or whatever. You know what I mean?
Precisely.
Not everyone. I'm acutely aware of that, but at least make it that the process Well, yeah, it could be exciting. Why not? Like, I mean, we're talking about creating something here. You know,
Absolutely, sure. The words alone cannot put across your concept and your idea all of the time. In many cases, and so, as you said, use the medium that you're looking for the money for in your presentation. I think before we leave this point that our national broadcaster, there should be an imperative there whereby they have programs that would give out to all these different groups dotted around the country, you know, which is a shame, really. There's no outlet for them, you know, and in many cases, very good creative people like Father Ted had to go abroad.
Yeah, I mean, we don't.
I know that's not, but you know, that's not comparable. But nevertheless,
No, it is. It is. I mean, it's. There's a lack of imagination at the planning for culture, and that's unfortunately there. I mean, there's, you know, you can't say it's entirely that way, but for the most part, it's an afterthought. You know, I mean, how would I put it? I mean, we've put on 2 plays now, and I went to Barnsley last year, and there's not one penny from the Irish government to apply to Culture in Ireland, and nothing. I don't have a track record. And that's true for a lot of people. I'm not alone in that. I'm not, you know, solo. No, it can improve though. I mean, that's the thing. I don't really want to go over spilt milk because it just, like saying, Kevin, I won't really solve it, but it's more, what can we do in the future? I think that's really the thing. And 2 is, I mean, I think just that's the importance of culture, because regardless of it, I'm still going to create culture, and many like me, you know, because there's enough people that say no. There's a whole industry there. It's more what, you know, this life is short. What can we do with that time that we have? I think that's, to me,
that's a fair point, Dermot. And getting on to Farmer Dan Answer Man, how did that come about?
Well, it was, you know, my partner Joan, you know, said I was such a wise and intelligent and articulate person that what happened was
she needs help.
She's going on with me. She needs a lot of help, poor thing. But it was more. It was sage advice, etc. And the first one was basically, you know, threesome. And it was kind of like, I don't know if you remember Ireland's Own, they used to have an agony ant there. And on the press, she used to have it too back in the day. And there was Dear Frankie on the radio. Again, they're just telling my age here. But we still live in the age where, you know, it's at the moment, it's Karen on Facebook telling us, you know, why everything is a conspiracy. Yeah. But it's just, I'm a big fan of Spike Lee or the Goons or that kind of absurdist humor. And a lot of it is the wordplay. It's just, you know, you're asking me one thing and the answer I'm giving you is totally different. And the real reality is that, you know, it's just having to crack. You know, it's really that's about the size of it.
Yeah, I dipped into good film and I enjoy them actually, and not because you're here. I enjoy them, you know, and it's different as well, you know. And of course, it gives energy to your thinking, to your output. It hones. I suppose it helps to hone your craft. That awful word, you know.
No, it is. We need to do more of them because they were very popular, and it's more. Actually, we need to do it because it's also just there's a humor in North Clare where I grew up in, and it's very understated, you know. And I was trying to get some of that across, and it's you know, and it's even with the thing, the question's crazy. People won't overreact, you know. It's just very. And I just was trying to capture that, you know, because like Joan is from Monaghan, and they'll boast about something which probably isn't true. Whereas in North Clare, you could win the Nobel Prize, but you know you weren't the greatest farmer that ever lived. You know what I mean? There'll be a slight encroachment there.
You're late bringing in the hay would be more of a crisis than winning the Nobel Prize. Yeah,
it's lovely you won the you won the prize, but there's the deal gone right there, you know.
It's gone to seed. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly.
But another thing, I don't know, have you many, I haven't done my research on that, have you many Olympic champions in North Clare? I must look it up.
Hold on a second here.
Yeah.
Just a big moment. I know we'll go to the sports section here. You see here, Shadow the Cat.
Oh, what a beautiful. How long have you heard him?
him. It was a him. Well, it was a her, but it turned out it was a him because I got into the rescue service thing.
Yeah.
But we trained for the Olympics and about 3 years, and it was all going well until they cancelled it. And
They cancelled the Olympics.
Yeah, he's not crazy about doing. He was sleeping over there, and he's not crazy about it. You know, there you go. See?
Yeah, there you are. They're very into him. So I noticed that the little short film was very interesting. I liked that. I shared it with my friends, and I didn't realise that cancelling of the Olympics would have such an effect in North Clare. But you never know with these things.
It was catastrophic.
Yeah, and you. And you never know.
Over it now, you know. To be honest with
you never know how the ripple down effect does eventually, where it does stop.
Yeah, no.
In our case, it stopped in Doolin.
Yes, you know what I mean. It was, you know.
No, Dermot, the first time I came across you, your work rather was in the Bell Table when you put on that play Time Travel and Leaving Cert.
Right, thank you. That was with the Limerick Youth Theatre, and I was during Limerick Year Culture, and we're still in the process with Time Travel and the Leaving Cert to make it a feature film. Now, again, it's probably we're looking at 2021, but it's set here in North Clare, and it's set on a real event, Dicer Today, and that was a fantastic experience because Angia, that works with the Limerick Youth Theatre, they do fantastic work there, and they were great to work with, you know.
And just a little bit to the background for people who may not know about this is it was based, as you said, on a real live event that happened.
Exactly. I mean, the title is not real. So just, you know,
don't mind that.
We don't have time travel in North Clare. I mean, we'd love to boast about it, but that I know of. But it more or less the premise of the story is it's the main character discovers what they call a wormhole, that he can travel in time. So he thinks he's trying to go back or go forward to get the Leaving Cert results. The problem with the wormhole, it keeps bringing back to the one day, which was the day previous to the Battle of Dicer Dee, when the Norman forces had a battle with the Celtic clans of North Clare. And again, this is never taught in the history books, but the Irish bait the living daylights out of them, and the English didn't have a foothold in North Clare until the time of Queen Elizabeth, which is a couple of hundred years.
Oh, because this is eye-opener for a lot of people, I'd say, Dermot.
Well, it's also the way we teach history. We always go with the misery guts and stuff, you know. It's a bit like Peg Sayers, and the potatoes died and the people died, you know, rather than we actually are capable of this. And it's, no, the story itself is more or less, he has to learn up about this. He actually has to do well at school, and he gets the girl and all that. But the battle I was really fascinated by, and again, it was an eye-opener to me just how well it was. And the irony was that it was Richard de Clare was the Norman leader, and Clare, the county, gets his name from him, which is, again, quite ironic. But then, you know, we have a Norman past. I just think it's the way we tell stories. We're very post-colonial. We're always dealing with the misery, rather than the fact there was hundreds of years and lots of people, rather regular people, that had victories. It wasn't all misery. We weren't always,
no.
You know, don't get me wrong. I am a 32-county socialist republic. I believe, you know, in the republic, and the English rule was atrocious, especially in the west of Ireland. But there were moments of glories. It's a bit like Limerick with Patrick Sarsfield. There was victories there.
Oh, there were many, and they should be celebrated more, as you said, in our history.
Much more.
I mean, my history stopped in 1916 of my generation. That was it.
After that?
There was nothing after 1916 in my history.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
But we know there has been. But I'm saying that, as you said, the whole structure of education for my generation, was when I look back on it, well, we survived, I suppose. That's what we can say.
Yeah.
We can say about. But that is how Time Travel and Leaving Cert came about, and I thought the play was just marvelous. To be great to revive it again. Would it cost money like anything else?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, it did really well. But I'm really, you know, getting back to that, I'm probably going to do a crowdfunding campaign later on, because we're hoping to shoot an independent feature and distribute it ourselves. Because my first primary thing was a filmmaker, and I came back I'd lived in the States for a long time. I made a feature film, and you're sort of in this false world of film festivals and all this, and, you know, there's only very few people see it. And what we're hoping to do is make the film in 2021 and actually rent out the cinemas, get it to people, and get it directly to the audience. And I'm using again, like, because I grew up in the time of punk rock, and that was very much about, you know, you recorded the record yourself and you sold it directly to the punter.
Exactly.
You know, rather than, you know, a big corporation and getting lost. And it's because it is a cracking story. I mean, I was very proud of that and very proud of the thing. And, you know, we have all the locations, etc. And I mean, and it's actually, it would make a great film in, that it would be cinematic rather than a lot of the Irish cinema, which tends to be flat and two-dimensional. That's just
right. And the film on time travel and leaves are that on that story, or how many would be involved in that now, Dermot? Just
well, the cast is about, I think there's about 20 now. We had to cut it down, but we have a film crew. We've done the budget. We have a crew together, but it's, you know, we have it done in such a way that we could do it very strongly with very, very little, you know. So you're talking about a crew of about like 10 people and about a cast of 20. You know, they always wouldn't be together. There's only one or two scenes where you've got a lot of extras.
Yeah.
The rest are pretty short things there. And we would shoot all around, like between Liston, Varna, Doolin, Kilshanny, this whole area here.
Yeah, the locality, yeah.
The locality, because again, Ireland's we're blessed with locations.
Oh, absolutely.
Unique places, you know what I mean? I mean, I think in a lot of ways, after all this, Ireland's actually in a pretty good place because we, just an accident in history, but we have a lot of nature here. And, you know, I think that's the one thing that, say, you're in Europe or America, everything is so the same or so bland, or people living in cities. And the locations, because cinema just brings you on a journey, like culture, escapism. Again, just opinion. I'm not going, no scientific fact to back this. But I know, just living in this area, the biggest increase in tourism the last couple of years is walking or being out in the wilds, and people just want to connect with that. You know, I think that's that, and I think again, culture can make them aware of it, etc. You know, so. But if you don't want to be a bored fault, you had either. So that's the thing. So.
Cool. This is LíRmedia.tv, and our special guest is Dermott Petty on LíR Confidential. Tell all your friends about us. info@LíRmedia.tv, and of course at Ballycartoon Productions. And Dermott, that film, we look forward to that. Now, moving on to, God, you've been a busy man. It's only when I was looking back, doing a small bit of research, and you might wonder, did I do any, but I did a small bit. Driving Lessons for the Broken-Hearted. Tell us about that.
Well, there is.
It's a fantastic title.
It is, and it's a pretty darn good play, if I say so. But yeah, you don't get a chance to see it, but it did really well. I grew up in Liston, Varna. I live in Doolin with the same parish, same football team. Is the matchmaking capital of Ireland and stuff. And I know it's the original start was they discovered these mineral waters, and then you had a very lot of the English aristocracy and the Protestant middle class, and then the newly emerging Catholic middle class came from Cork and Tipperary. You're kind of, you know, big farmers and stuff. And it was the season. So there was a really genuine traditional matchmaking festival. But that ended all probably around 1930. And in the 1960s, it kind of became the place, it became like Ireland's Vegas. People went there they'd go cracked for that month, go crazy. And it's really become sort of like the last chance saloon for a lot of people. And it's, you know, it's a lot of different things. So there's the social dancing, which is it's a very safe place. You can go crazy there because you're so far away. It's a bit like Dingle, you're cut off. So there's very little, you know, real aggro. But there's a lot of tragedy, just people trying to find it. And I was at the bell table it was a thing with the Arts Council, in fairness, and it was Connect, and it was working on new projects. And the thing was, one of the things I noticed coming back from Ireland, that if you are over 40 and you're not either married or you're divorced, well, you're not seen in society. Whereas in America, you could have a third act, a fourth act, and a fifth act. You could be
Precisely.
Here, it was almost like you put on the bachelor pants and it was all over. So, and they loved, but the thing was, dancing is really important. So jiving lessons was there. When you watch some of the people on the dance floor, these people can really dance. You know, they might be the biggest muckraker, or there could be the little quiet guy in the corner with the pioneer pin, or the gal that wouldn't say boo to a goose. But once they dance, they're magnificent. But a lot of it was just dealing with, and some of it is just, I mean, I couldn't make it up. People would come to me and say, that didn't happen. I says, it happened more than you would know. But But we played it in Liston Ireland. It was a huge success. We toured it. We were part of the one-act drama, and it really resonated. It really resonated.
Well,
We were hoping to do it with the Ballantine Festival. Now, didn't quite make it, so maybe the next time. But there was also just the audiences really reacted, because they also saw people they didn't normally see up on the stage, you know, and I think that's
right.
important, really, really.
And as you said, there's a whole plethora of people in a specific category, particularly in rural Ireland, but in urban Ireland as well,
Yeah, yeah.
where they're, I don't mean on purposely forgotten about, where they're invisible, and
Yeah.
all the loneliness and the challenges that bring is just heartbreaking to see, I suppose, from time to time, you know. I know myself,
No,
yeah.
yeah. No, sorry, Pat, you were saying.
No, myself, that at the age I'm at now, you know, we were talking about it last night on our own, on a different show. You cannot be serious, but the outlet for people to enjoy themselves, just go to have a dance and a social activity. That's all. You know, if anything else comes of it, just by accident at our age. But anyway, I would always say.
No. It really is, because I mean, even there are outlets, there are certain expectations. Now, a lot of it is, you know, culturally, just conservatism didn't do as well. We're still like teenagers. We're trying to come to grips with these things. If you go to places like the UK or France or America, where divorce and, you know, all these things were been part of the culture for a long time. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but people have the awareness that if this has ended, well, there's a new beginning over here.
Right.
Here, it's like that happened or it didn't happen, and you're invisible over here.
Yeah.
And if you don't play sports or you don't play music and you're over a certain age, well, you don't exist, and that's tragic. You know what I mean? Now, for me, it's all right that there's comedy in that, but I think it is a question. It is a conversation that needs to happen in Irish society in general. You know, and it's not political. This is more a society question. You know, or a society need. I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and there are a few people in society today in the Dáil that do, I suppose, touch on this from time to time, but it's, I know, there is not enough attention paid to it with the huge suicide rate in rural Ireland as well, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, to get onto that, but you know, it's all part and parcel of the same tragedy, I suppose. That's
it is,
unfolding.
and I'd be weird because I mean, I always think that politics could do more, but I also think just in society in general needs to have this conversation, because if you bring this up to people who are not aware of it, they'll almost deny it, and it's often because they're actually in the bubble that everything is fine. Whereas on the other side, it's like, well, that's just sort of cute or it's whimsical, but it's not. It's tragic, you know. I mean, and it's, again, there's no clear cut answer.
You're right. I mean, I don't have to tell you, Dermot. If you're a bachelor up around outside Kilfenore, up in whatever the townland you're living in, and the nearest social outlet to you is, generally speaking, the local pub.
Yeah.
Much derided and wrongly, in my opinion. And if that's 6 miles down the road and you can't drive there anymore, well, a bit of despair would set in, wouldn't it, if you can't socialise anymore, like.
Of course.
And that's replicated throughout the west of Ireland.
Yeah. No, very much so. I mean, it's also just connection. There's a lot of different things there. It's, you know, it's also just villages in Ireland are pretty small. If you go to France, the farmers live in.
Yeah. Well,
in Ireland, not to do more with the land war and anything else, most people live out quite rural. It's disconnected. There was a time when people would meet in the 30s and 40s, mainly just because of those houses around it. But it's a different society now, and it's different needs and different expectations. So, but it was a good play, very funny. So just there you go. Yeah.
You're right saying that it is a different society, but human beings are the same all the time, whether it's 100 years ago or 50 years ago. But so that's jiving lessons, lads. Watch out for that. It'll certainly have to tour again. Jiving lessons for the broken-hearted. I'm speaking with Dermott Petty, artistic output extraordinaire in North Clare, and delighted to have you, Dermott. Now, we must come on to your. I listened to. I was saying to Dermott before we recorded this. I was listening to his interview last night with Tom Dunn, talking about the only punk rocker in the village, and obviously the name itself, bang. What's this? You know, it's I know it. You have a genius for names, I must say. Titles.
Titles. I think that some writers said the titles was 50% of it. Don't you have that? You know.
How long was that gestating now in your brain? The only
It
punk
was
rock
there
in the
for a while.
village?
It was more. I was the only punk rocker in the village. I grew up in Listonvarna, and even though like everyone's been there, it's actually a very small village. It's only about a population of 600 people.
Yeah.
And again, everything like happens by accident. But years later, I was actually talking to Joan about it, talking to the people, and I always said you should do something with it. So I began writing it about last year, and it was much longer than it needed. And then we got invited to Barnstable Festival. And Joan was supposed to come over because she's directing it. Then she had to go to Australia. Her two daughters were there, and one of them had a baby. So I ended up in Barnstable on my own. And this was the most terrifying moment of my life because I didn't know a sinner there.
All right.
And you suddenly are telling me, it's my own story, which is very terrifying. I was performing it as well.
Yeah.
And it went down really well. And they got it because a lot of it is very universal. And then we did it in Listonvarna for a couple of nights in October, then really well. We went to Doon Writers Festival. Now, we were hoping at this time to be touring with it, but the premise of it is, it's more the cultural shock of the 1970s. I mean, you live in one television station. It's all, and around here, it was all traditional music. It was jigs or reels, or you did that. You know?
And
then there was, and I know you're a big fan of the show band thing, but I was a bit more scarred by that. I also came at the latter end. They weren't quite as good in the 70s. I know in the 60s they had full horns. In the 70s it was like, you could smell the boredom and the beer off them. But that was the world you live in. You know what I mean? It was like the social thing, the local youth club. So you're finding out about culture through popular culture, which is always very dangerous and very funny and very wonderful. You know, so it's like John Peel at night, which the irony was the only time you could get the BBC in North Clare late at night was around 10 o'clock at night. So you're learning about these things, and it's the cultural clash that happens, and it's suddenly you go from being this nice, quiet lad to suddenly you're hearing, listening to records that don't sound like, you know, Jim Reeves on the record player, and there's, you know, there's consideration, etc. You know. But it was a brilliant time, though. You know what I mean? It's you know, we live now in an age where everything is so available, internet-wise, or, you know, media-wise. But even up to 20 years ago, you had to fight really hard to find the records you like. I mean, you're a big jazz head. You know how hard and difficult that was to get jazz records in Ireland in the 1970s?
Oh, sure. I was lucky in myself that I was in London in 1973.
Right.
So the shock I got to going from a rural North Cork small village with one pub and a post office to London.
Yeah.
I must have been in shock. I didn't realise it for weeks and weeks till I adjusted. Anyway, it's not about me, it's about you, Dermot. So the genesis of that is Listonvarna wouldn't be exactly the height or the middle of the punk rock era.
No. No, and again, this is one of the things, and I'm sure you had the thing, when I was the only punk rocker, there was a half other punk rocker.
Right.
Barry, but he was away in boarding school, so he was kind of like a wild scout coming back with new records and new books.
All right.
You know? It wasn't just punk rock. I mean, I hadn't heard Bob Dylan at this stage, or much of David Bowie, or, you know, and there'd be books they'd recommend to read or whatever, you know, because it was just, RT played a little bit of pop music. It wasn't a great amount, and it was like these 15-minute, there was like Mitchelstown had 15 minutes, or whoever had, you know.
Right.
Larry Gogan would play bits and pieces, but there was really nothing there, and there was no pirate radio station in North Clare. You might have it in Cork and Dublin.
We had a good few. We had a few down in Cork, which was. We had AFN, the American Forces Network Radio, was my first exposure to the outside world. Well, my dad used to tune it in because he was a boxing fanatic, and they used to broadcast all the famous boxing fights on AFN.
Yeah.
So that's why he used to tune in, just in Berlin somewhere in Germany. But anyway, Shinskele. But
yeah.
Of course, Listonvarna itself had the famous festival where you had Jackson Browne and Emmy Lou.
That's true. That kind of, you see, this is that happened just when I was doing my leaving cert, because the first festival was across the field from us, then they went out to a different location, and that actually was a very good, very eclectic festival. But by that stage, I'd left. I mean, I literally went up to Dublin, worked for a bit, then I went to Amsterdam and went to the USA. But that was great. That was a great kind of like a catalyst or a zeitgeist of social change, all these things, like Macron and Cork with Rory Gallagher. You know, there was little clinks in the armour happening all the time.
Yes, yes.
You know, by the 80s, of course, it had changed. You had suddenly had, again, around our way, we had the 2 TV channels. That made a big difference. And in pop radio. But just like David Bowie was on about when in the 60s, when he was getting into things, you had to fight really hard to find a record or, you know, listen to the blues or listen to this. Where he says, now it's like with the internet, and this is, you know, he said this 10 years before he died, that's all changed. He said, no, it's a totally different thing. It's, you know, how you present it. Because in some ways it's wonderful that these things are there, but in other case, there isn't that sense of innocence or that sense of, you know.
Right.
You know,
and how do you feel now with the advent of Spotify? And how does an artist, any creative artist like yourself, because after all, you must buy tea and coffee and pay the bills at the end of the day. Like you can't live in fresh air, even though the fresh air up around where you are is fabulous and very clean but it'll only go so far. So,
I think it's a great question. I think it's like, because even, you know, 10 years ago, you could make a movie and try and sell it just on DVDs. You can't do that anymore. You can't sell the records. I mean, I listen to Spotify. I also realize it's not great for the artist. Now, there are things there, I think, in the long term, and this is more a general thing, they're going to have to reform it, just like they did with the Irish famous playwright that did the Shangri-La. I can't think of his name, but he was the first one that got royalties for the writers from the plays they wrote.
Right.
But going back to, say, Time Travel and Leaving Cert, or even with The Only Punk Rocker in the Village, I'd have to say this, when I put it on the show, and once I pay all my costs, I do make a few pounds. Not a huge amount, but I make a few pounds. Now, again, not enough, you know, and how I just broke about even here, but I was hoping from this point on, and this would be my hope in the future. And again, it's not just that, it's more that we can reach audiences. That's the thing, because Doolin, where I live now, has a tradition of storytelling from the last couple of 100 years, and it was very much people coming around to their houses at night.
Yeah, I remember growing up with that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think that's the way forward for the artists. It's like, that's why I want to make Time Travel in the Leaving Cert. Not so much that, you know, I live in the lap of luxury and drive the Jaguar. It's more, can I make more work, create more work from that, and have the tea and the coffee and all that, you know, because.
And is it a challenge, Dermot, sorry for calling it, is it a challenge in protecting copyright of your work? Is it a challenge for you?
There are some very clear specifics in there. I know this is a writer because I've written some scripts and I've had dealings with people where people have tried to, you know, pull a fast one, frankly speaking. There are straightforward copyrights there. Where it's difficult now is, say you wrote the hit song 20 years ago and you were getting a lot of money. Now you're getting very little because Spotify and YouTube are paying peanuts. It's even like the Farmer Dan thing. A lot of people think if you're up on YouTube, you're making money. A lot of those guys are not making that much money. It's more influencers, etc. So you have to figure out new media streams. And I don't have the answer to that. That thing that's going back to your early start at the beginning. That's why you need the Arts Council. That's why you need these things to come in with it. It's also just one thing I learned when we did jiving lessons for the brokenhearted. There's audiences out there all over the country that are mad for culture. But it doesn't have to be in the Glore or the Bell Table. It can be in Charlie's Hall down the road.
Yeah.
When I was at the Bell Table, there was a really good teacher, Laura Evans. She was about being site-specific. I mean, I should be able to display right here, right now, what's there. We need to come back to that kind of basics. That's just the thing. No, not for everyone. There's still going to be the big show, the big plus, etc. And we've been through this. I mean, during the Spanish influenza, they closed the music halls, which was catastrophic. But they opened up again. And if you were to take, say, and again, this tells you how media changes. If you looked at media in 1918, music hall was the biggest media by far.
Oh, absolutely.
Well glorified. And then you see it where it is now. But it's still about connecting with the audience, regardless of what medium you're using. You know, storytelling for the 21st century is very much on that.
Well, yeah, live people will always matter, thank God. But has technology... I've been looking at this myself. Has technology really passed out the laws and the protections. You know what I mean? Is
Well,
our
no,
protections?
it has, and a lot of it is you take, say, Facebook or you take YouTube. They need to change these things. There's talks about it. The EU, and again, this is why I'm a proponent of the EU. They have been talking about it very, very strongly. The US Congress, actually, when it does get its act together, are very good on this. But
Yeah.
if you take the hypocrisy, say Bono, who I'm a fan of, but he has big shares in Facebook. It's people like that that need to make the changes. You need to take them to task because they're making a fortune on it. They're making money on it because every time you click it on, if Pat Barry has a song on that you really like and I click it and I'm enjoying it, Facebook's making money because every time we're clicking on it, they're getting the ads in the corner. The artist who created the record is getting nothing. Pennies, not even pennies on the dollar, it's farthings on the dollar.
And I seen recently there during the week, I know what newspaper, I don't buy newspaper, I just scan online, but I buy the Sunday there's Business Post. I like reading that. There's good journalists in that. That's only my opinion. But anyway, and if you hear this, you can give us a few bob lads. We mentioned the Sunday Business Post, but a few artists, well-known artists, have left YouTube and taken down all their work from YouTube.
Yeah,
which is the beginning, and they've gone over to Spotify.
Yeah, well, Spotify pay a little bit more, but again, you get
YouTube is one of the shareholders of Spotify.
Well, that's where you get it. Gmail owns this. Facebook owns Instagram. I mean, look, everyone goes on about big government. I wouldn't worry about big government. At least we all have a share in that. I worry about big corporations. That's the thing. But I won't get that because that's when the revolution will come. You know.
No, you won't. No, I think Dermott, you're right about that. You get total agreement in that.
Yeah, but again, I think again with the artists, and it's also just things like outlets like yourself giving airing to people that maybe are not in the mainstream. I do appreciate that. Unfortunately, Pat, I'm going to have to get going here.
Yes, we are actually coming to the end anyway, Dermott, and we look forward to the film Time Travel and the Leaving Cert. Well, I certainly will look forward to it anyway, Dermott. And it's been an absolute blast talking to you and seeing you after such a long time, you know.
It's good seeing you. Changed a bit, you know.
So for this edition of LíR and LíR Confidential, I'd like to thank Dermott Petty, our guest this morning, and catch up with him again in another couple of months to see where he is. Thank you very much, Dermott, for participating, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Mary. Thank you very much.